All right, that was Kentucky Senator Rand Paul from earlier today. He joins us now with much more. All right, I want to talk about Iran. I want to play for you. Before you even came out today, there was an attack on you. Do you know where it came from?
No, if you tell me, then we'll know who the
It's the
rat
Foundation for Secure America, and this is the ad that they ran.
Right.
The Senate is considering tough new sanctions on Iran. President Obama says he'll veto them, and Rand Paul is standing with him. Rand Paul supports Obama's negotiations with Iran, and he doesn't understand the threat.
You know, it's ridiculous to think that they're a threat to our national security.
Rand Paul is wrong and dangerous. Tell him to stop siding with Obama, because even one Iranian bomb would be a disaster.
I want to give you a chance to respond. They used a quote of yours back in 2007 where you said it's ridiculous to think that Iran is a real threat to our national security. That was 2007.
It's been a little while ago.
Okay. 8 years ago.
You know, things do change over time. Also, wasn't campaigning for myself. I was campaigning to help my father at the time. But I would say that almost every element of the ad's a lie. I mean, they say I'm helping the president. I'm actually one who has said to the president that this deal, when it becomes final, has to be finalized by Congress. And I've said I've done that to actually strengthen the president's hand, but I do want him negotiating from a position of strength.
Do you think he has been?
No, I think that's what I'm trying to tell him, is that you're going to have to bring a deal back to us. And also, you should be coming to Congress and trying to get support. But see, democracy's messy, and he doesn't really want to dirty his hands with democracy. He does it all the time, whether it's immigration or anything.
The ad is basically trying to say that your policies are similar to that of Obama. It's dangerous to the United States, and you're siding with Obama.
Yeah.
You're saying that's not true.
Well, it's completely untrue. I'm one of the ones who signed the letter to Iran recently. I'm one of the ones who have said all along that Congress puts the sanctions on. I voted for the sanctions.
Right.
So they're basically trying to create an issue and a wedge. But I'll tell you what it does show you. Somebody's worried about me. On my day when I'm announcing someone's spending $1 million. Yeah. Because they want it
Do you
the
have any
same
ideas
way.
who it is? Do you know this guy Reed?
No, I have no idea really who these people are, but I think that I would say they're part of the neocon community. The neoconservatives sort of believe these are the same people who wanted to give arms to Gaddafi and then the next year's wanted to topple Gaddafi. They've been on both sides of every war. The only thing consistent about their message is we should always be at war.
Well, let me ask you two things that Obama clarified about the deal today. Number one, that Iran is not required to recognize Israel. And then he also talked about that right now they'd be 1 year away from getting nukes, but 13 years, the breakout time would be 0. He said that today. So that basically means in 13 years, by the president's own words, that they would have the ability to make nuclear weapons. Is that acceptable to you?
I think what bothers me most about it, above and beyond even the details, is there was an article written in the New York Post the other day by Amir Tahir, and he said that when you look at what the Iranians are writing and then you look at what the Americans are writing, you have two completely opposite things going on here, with the Americans saying the treaty is going to mean this, and then the Iranians saying, oh, no, it doesn't mean that at all. And they say it in English to it.
Right?
Yeah. Zarif sends out tweets in English saying, oh, treaty doesn't mean that at all. And so it's like, it's hard for those of us who actually do want negotiations to succeed to believe in something where they're immediately saying it doesn't mean what we say it means.
You mentioned in the speech, I think this is important, shouldn't it be a prerequisite? While these negotiations were going on, just 2 weekends ago, the Iranian leader was shouting death to America. In the middle of these negotiations, they said Israel's destruction is not negotiable. Doesn't there have to be a prerequisite before you even sit down that if you really want to join the world community, you can't be saying those things or burning flags, as you mentioned today?
You wonder how you could have any sincerity if you're saying we're going to attack our neighbors, we're not going to renounce terrorism, we're not going to recognize Israel, and then we're supposed to be believed that we actually will get rid of our nuclear ambitions. So really, if they truly want peace, I do think they need to be sincere, but they can't come out. Who can believe their sincerity when they come out immediately and start tweeting out in English, oh, the treaty doesn't mean what President Obama says it means?
This is important because a lot of people have characterized that you supported the president in negotiating, and you talked about it. You don't have a problem negotiating with enemies, but there's got to be prerequisites. You can't chant death to America. You can't say the destruction of Israel is not off the table. You can't be funding Hezbollah. and the rebels in Yemen?
Here's what separates me.
What are the prerequisites for you?
Sort of the naivete of the neocons is they don't want to negotiate with anybody.
Right.
They just want war. The difference is I want negotiations from a position of strength. I'm a Reagan Republican. He believed in peace through strength, but he did talk to the Russians. It would have been a mistake. And you know when Reagan did? Many of these neocons that are still around today criticize Reagan for talking to the Russians. So realize these loud sort of, I think, juvenile voices putting pictures of bombs on ads. These are the people who are so reckless that would be gravely dangerous to our country to ever have these people in charge of our country.
I guess my question is this. Should there be prerequisites? There's a lot of money at stake for the Iranians here if the sanctions are lifted, which you supported.
Right.
So the question is, should there be some prerequisite? Should they acknowledge Israel's right to exist? Should they stop funding terror?
Yes.
And then negotiations can begin in earnest.
That's the point that Netanyahu made when he came here. It's not
you agree
just
with that?
Yeah, it's not just about the nuclear weapons. It's about intercontinental ballistic missiles, and it's about the spread of terrorism. But see, I would sum it up in a bigger phrase: credibility and sincerity. Will they adhere to what they're saying the agreement is? But when they're immediately tweeting out and saying it isn't what we say it is, it gives me grave doubt that they're negotiating at all in any kind of faith.
With what the president said today, that they don't have to acknowledge Israel's right to exist, and that in the 13th year he's acknowledging zero breakout time. Is that a deal you could ever think about supporting?
I think what makes it very difficult for me is the lack of sincerity in the description of the Iranians of the agreement. If they were coming out and saying, I personally would have a different approach to the details.
Right.
If Zarif would have come out, the Iranian foreign minister would have said, we are going to not only do this agreement, we are going to work to limit intercontinental ballistic missiles over the future. We are no longer going to commit terrorism, and we really are not going to invade the boundaries of other countries. That might be enough for me to say, you know what? He really is sincere, but he's saying the opposite of all those things.
I agree, because it's been such a contrast.
Yeah.
But in any deal that would have a 13-year immediate breakout period, is that a deal changer? In other words, because that basically would be the U.S. seal of approval on Iran getting nukes.
I think the detail that makes the most important to me is whether or not you're negotiating with a reliable partner. If the partner is reliable, the details, I don't want to say an absolute 13, 14, 15, the best would be never, obviously, that they're giving up their nuclear ambitions forever. And if they were sincere, they could say something like that.
You don't think the United States position should be then that under no circumstances at any point can they have a nuke? Because here's my fear.
Right.
As I think radical Islamists, and you mentioned naming that in your speech today, coupled with weapons of mass destruction, that is a prescription potentially for a modern-day Holocaust, right?
But see, the Middle East is very complicated. Not only do we have to worry about the Iranians are actually helping with the current menace over there, which is ISIS. Yeah. So the thing
we're helping them there, and we're fighting them in Yemen.
Yeah, it's a very complicated world. Also, you look at Syria, and the people who did that crazy ad against me, these are the people who also want to bomb Assad. They want to bomb Assad and ISIS simultaneously. Had we bombed Assad, I was one of the leading opponents against a bombing Assad. Why? Because I thought ISIS would grow stronger, and that I guarantee you right now, ISIS would be in Damascus ruling the whole country had we bombed Assad. Doesn't make Assad a good guy,
but I don't hear you saying,
counterbalance people. You need to counterbalance the powers.
I don't hear you saying under no circumstances could we ever trust the Iranians with nukes. So
no, we should not trust them with a nuclear weapon ever.
What do you say to Lindsey Graham, who took a shot at you and said, oh, everyone would have gotten a better deal but Rand Paul?
Well, almost anyone in the Congress would better defend the Bill of Rights than this particular senator. So, touche.
All right, I want to get to that, but one other thing. Back in, I guess it was 2011, you were in an interview with Wolf Blitzer, and you had said to him that you would end foreign aid for every country, including Israel. You've since changed that position.
Well, no, ultimately that still is the goal, and people get confused on this. They always want me to have changed position.
Right.
My goal is that ultimately there would be a time when we would have very little or no foreign aid.
For anybody.
But here's the interesting thing about this. People won't think this through. This is Netanyahu's position.
Yeah.
When he came in '96, he said that ultimately he wanted Israel to be free of it, and that there would come a time when Israel's defense industry, see, when we give them money, we require that they buy the military weapons from us. Ultimately, there will be a time when Israel can be free of foreign aid too. But what I've said in the meantime is that The people agree with me on foreign aid, but in Congress there's very few people. That what we should do is, why don't we start with people who burn our flag and hate us?
Right.
And so the one thing I can tell you from visiting Israel is you'll never see anybody in Israel burn our flag.
No, they're not burning our flag.
They are our friends.
But the Iranians are.
Absolutely.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, not everybody's happy that Senator Paul's running for president. Shocker. Coming up next.